Okay. All right, friends. It looks like we're live. I've got a green light up there. Let's see who is out there today. Hi, everybody. I have a few people that are joining me again. I was live 2 hours ago working on an art piece, but now I'm looking forward to showing you how to put together your big Mystery Stars quilt. And let me tell you something. I have fallen behind, so I'm going to go ahead and confess right now. I have fallen behind because I was spending time with my grandkids this past week. We had some severe storms going on, and so my grandchildren decided they wanted to spend some time with me, and so I took them out. Just show you a couple pictures of my grandbabies so you can see. And this is what I spent my day doing. So I took my grandchildren to this place called Bernheim Forest, and I let them run around and hike to check out these art pieces by an artist called Mr. Dambo. And so these are these giant forest trolls, and they're going to be taken down at the end of the year, I think, because it said they were supposed to be here through 2024. So it was on my grandchildren's list of things they wanted to do. So I took them out, and that's what we did. And so when I should have been quilting, I was actually running around in the forest. And so I'm going to go ahead and apologize for that. But that's okay. We're going to finish what we need to finish today, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to put together my quilt, if that's okay with you guys. All right, so let me go ahead and share. I'm going to share my desktop again, and I'm going to pull up what you need to see. So this quilt finishes in 9 segments, and it has a lot of odds and ends, blocks that are different sizes. But if you break down a quilt that's extra large into chunks, you can see how to put it together. And so today I'm going to show you how to put together segment 1, segment 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are put together exactly the same way. I'm not going to make you watch me do it 9 times. So I'm going to do the first segment. I'm going to show you how to put it together. And then you're going to have to wait until we do our live stream in 2 weeks to see the finished top, because I've got to finish a couple of the little blocks. Like I said, I was gallivanting through the forest instead of quilting, and so I don't feel sad about that. I'm not sad about that at all. Okay, so let me move my keyboard out of the way, and let's get started. So let me get rid of this little round cam because it's just in the way. And let's go ahead and get started. Let me see if I can clear that up. All right. There we go. All right, friends, I'm going to raise this up so you guys can get a full view of these blocks. Okay, so let's start talking about Unit 1. So Unit 1 is the big unit on the top left-hand corner, and that has 4 little stars and 2 big stars. And all of these units are going to be put together in the same way, so don't panic, okay? Close that. Yeah, so the trolls were super cool, and my grandbabies, they get first choice. So if I have to quilt or I have to hang out with my grandbabies always come first. All right, so let me show you what's going on. All right, so for each of these blocks, if you noticed in the pattern, there was 2 size stars. We have these stars that say 6 by 6 because they are 6 by 6 finished. That means you have to start with a star that's 6.5 by 6.5. You join, in most cases, you join 2 of those units together. It gives you 12.5 inches, 12 inches across finished, which means you have 12 and, let me see what I have. It should be 12.25. But let me measure, because none of us have perfect sewing skills. So let me show you how this works. So mine is 12.5, which means it's a little tiny bit wider than it needs to be. And then this one down here is a little bit smaller than 12.5. And that happens sometimes because sometimes you don't quite press your block out. So see how this block has a little bit of give? I probably should have pressed that out a whole lot more before I put that together. But anyway, I'm going to show you how to put these together. And so I'm just going to make all of my blocks the same size from top to bottom, because I want these to fit in a unit. And so as long as my unit fits into the quilt, and let me just share my desktop again so you can see what I'm talking about. As long as, and let me pull up that image. As long as this unit up here at the top that I'm working on. So I have 12 and 12 is 24. As long as I'm really close to 24, I'm good. If I'm not close to 24, I can put a little skinny sashing, a compensation sashing across the top or across the bottom to make my piece fit where I want it to fit. So if it's 12 and 12 is 24 is the size after all the seam allowances are removed, that means this piece, in order for me to fit it into this unit, needs to be 20, well, in order for it to be 24, it needs to be 24 and a half, because I need to have a quarter of an inch on this side and a quarter of an inch on this side. And so I'm going to show you guys how to finish all of these pieces. All right, so let me just show you the first segment. Okay, so we're going to sew piece number 1. I need 4 little stars and then 2 big stars to put together this unit. Okay, let me shrink that down and let me go back to my 2 camera view. I don't know if you can see that. I'll raise that up as high as I can. Let me move this camera back. Okay, so this is my unit. I've put one of the units together. And then now I need a second unit for unit 1, right? And so I'm going to use this one right here, and I'm going to put both of these upside down like this. So I need to sew one with the star on top and one with the star on the bottom. And I have enough room here that I may trim that off without chopping that off. And so I'm trying not to chop my points off. Every now and again, a little bitty bit of a point gets chopped off, and I'm not too sad about it. But I put together this unit the same way as I did the other one. And this quilt, once you get it all put together, should measure 88 by 95, and that includes a small border. I'm doing a 4-inch border on mine. And that's like 223 centimeters by 241. All right, so the first thing that I did is I stitched 2 of the stars together, and I gave them a press. Now, these still could use a little bit more of a press, but see how there's some stretch in that? There's a tiny bit of stretch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to starch this. And some people don't like starching after, but I'm going to go ahead and just give it a little bit of starch. And anytime that I starch a piece, get rid of all of that, I go ahead and I dab most of the moisture, and then I usually set it aside, let it air dry, and then I come back and I press it once it's totally dry. Because if you press it when it's wet, it tends to curl up on you, buckle, and do weird stuff. But this one feels almost dry to the touch. And so now I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm going to press my seams nice and flat, because what I want is my pieces to all fit together nicely. Now, I trimmed each of these to 6.5 inches before I started this process. And so now I have a nice flat block. And if you notice when I press from the center to the outside. I'm not pushing my iron. I'm just gliding my iron across the surface. And now that it's dry, I'm ready to go. And there's not a bunch of puckers or curls because it's in how you press it. And so that's nice and flat. Look at that seam. And this is nice and ready. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to lay that block. I've already trimmed this block to 12.5 inches. And so now I'm going to lay this block and I'm going to do the same thing. This one's already been sitting over there marinating in its own little starch stew. So all I have to do is press this one out. And so I always press from the center to the outside, trying not to distort any of my seams. And so once I have that second piece done, I'm just going to take and I'm going to line up this seam in the middle This one is going that way. So I did press that seam the opposite way just so that they nest, and I'm going to lock that middle. Always start pinning from the middle and go out. And then I don't want to lose these points, so I need to make sure that I have a 1/4 of an inch, and I barely do on that one. So I may flip it this way. Yeah, that's a bigger seam, so I'm going to leave that up there. So that's going to go on the outside. Oh, no. It'll be all right. But don't panic about your pieces because, like I said, you're going to put them together like a big puzzle. So here we go. I'm going to anchor that this way, and that'll keep your block, this outside edge, from stretching. Anytime that I put blocks together, especially long seams, I like to use about 3 or 4 pins. All right, so let's go over to the sewing machine. And is it even threaded? Probably not, because I was art quilting, not doing other stuff. And so I'm just going to thread this really quick. Won't take me but a second. You guys get to watch me struggle with my sewing machine like I do all the time. All right. I normally leave my sewing machine threaded, but I took it all out earlier because I was changing the needle, cleaning out the lint, and giving it a little bit of TLC. I was oiling my machine. I do that at the end of every project so that when I start a new project, my machine is oiled and ready to go. And it's just a good practice to switch out that needle and clean up your machine so that when you get started on the next project, it's not a big disaster. All right, let's see if I can do this first try, maybe. Oh, that's fuzzy thread. If you're having trouble threading your needle like I do all the time, just snip that. A nice fresh edge does wonders. And I do lick my thread. It's super easy to get it through there once you lick that. So nice. All right. And look at that. Fuzz is still coming out. And that's even after I cleaned underneath that stitch plate. So make sure you take the time to do some routine maintenance. Your machine will love you for it. I've had this particular machine for 8 years without too many problems because I try to keep it clean. All right. There we go. Get all that thread out of the way. I'm also going to start with a little piece of fabric underneath there, just a piece of batting, a leader or ender, it doesn't matter what. I always like to start it on something other than my quilt block, and simply because that keeps that first stitch on my quilt block from puckering up on me. And so here we go. I'm going to line it up with the edge of that presser foot. I do have a 1/4 inch foot. It does help. I stop and I check that I'm not going to chop off that piece, and I'm going to slide it over just for a smidge, and that's so I don't chop off that piece right there. And now I'm going to come here and I'm going to pull that pin, and that just keeps those edges of that block from being nice and neat and from stretching. If you notice, I'm using my left hand to just kind of guide that through the machine. A lot of times we want to push and pull our blocks through there, and you shouldn't get your fingers too close. All right, so what happens if you put 2 blocks together and one block is slightly wider or longer than the other one? You always put the bigger block, the one that's slightly bigger, on the bottom, and the reason you do that is because the feed dogs will take in the extra, and then you don't have to worry about the difference between those two. All right, so let's look at what we've got here. All right, so now that I've got this big thing here, what am I going to do with this seam? Well, it depends on what happened with this block. So in this block, the seam got pressed upward, right? And so anytime that I put blocks opposite, I'm going to kind of see what seam goes next to it. So this seam goes here, and this seam is going upward. So that means I want to press that one downward. And the reason I want to do that is to help me match my points. And so this one lines up with this one lines up with this one. And so these are the two spots I'm going to use to line it up. So I'm going to press this downward. I'm going to come to the back, and I'm going to tickle that downward because that's got a lot of bulk there. And so I'm going to take, and I'm going to just kind of lay it with my hand over, and then I'm going to take with my the pad of my finger and kind of fillet that seam so that it goes the way I want it to. And then from there, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to press it with a hot dry iron. And so I'm going to drag that seam back the direction I want it to go. And this is why I like my wool mat. And then I'm going to go in there and try to make sure that my seam goes the way I want it to. And I'm going to flip that up. And then I'm going to run that iron, lifting it every time as I go across. And look, that seam is super flat now. Hot dry iron right along that seam and just making sure that it goes the way it needs to, and that did not get chopped off. This is why I like blocks like this that float and have a bunch of excess. And then look, I had just enough that this one didn't get chopped off either. And I have 1/4 of an inch. As long as you have 1/4 of an inch all the way around, those points are not going to get chopped. That one's not wanting to go the way I want it to because of the bulk. So I'm just going to have to do what I have to do there. All right, so now I'm going to lay this one on top of this one, and I'm going to find my match points. This seam is acting really weird, so I'm just going to press it again from the back. And I know that some quilters say, you know, it doesn't really matter which way the seams go. You can fillet them open, you can turn them around, you can have them twisted, but I say that it does make a difference in your finished piece. If you can match those seams and you can get them to lay flat, it really does make a difference. All right, so I'm going to pin that seam together. The more pins you use, especially these blocks because they start to get tall and long, the more pins you can use, the better, and especially at these seam points. And what that does is it just prevents those spots from stretching as you sew. If you are a new quilter and you're watching some of these YouTubers that don't pin at all, do so at your own peril. I've had more aggravation with not pinning, and so I became a religious pinner. I used to be like, nah, I don't need to pin. I can just eyeball it. And then I learned the hard way, especially when you do a lot of precision work, that you have to pin in order to keep everything from getting wobbly on you. Okay, so now I have all these pins and I have all this stuff, and I'm going to make sure that it goes the correct direction. To reduce bulk, I swirled that seam because I don't want a big bulky seam there. And now I'm going to sew these two together. So I'm going to take it to the machine and I'm going to get her done. I love, how many of you have a machine that is like your favorite machine? This one is mine, but I love vintage old machines. I have machines that are like 60 and 70 years old. I have a machine that's almost 100 years old, and it's a treadle. And I love my old workhorses. They are amazing little machines, and they are great. At some point, I'm going to do a video, and I'm going to show you guys how to care for your vintage ladies, how to give them a little spa day, and how to find garage sale bargain machines. I have, shall I confess, I have a total of like almost 30 sewing machines, and I feel really bad about having that many sewing machines, and so I may sell a few of them and let them find new loving homes, so we'll see. I'm getting to the point in my life where I need to start thinking about thinning the herd so that my poor children won't have to deal with that when I get older. So if you're interested in restoring an old vintage lady like I love to do, please let me know and I will do a video. You can leave a comment letting me know if you want to know how to take care of your vintage lady. Okay, now that slid a little bit, so I'm just going to scooch it. Check, always check, even if you pin, it can scooch on you. And just try to keep it straight, keep those edges down, and try not to run over your intersection so you don't chop your points off. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. And so now I have a manageable chunk. And so that's the part of a quilt that's this big, is that you want your quilt to be put together in what I call manageable chunks. So let me get this out of here. And let me show you what I'm talking about. So now that I have this chunk right here, I have one unit, right? So this is unit number 1. And so it's going to go in the top left-hand corner, and I'm going to lay it out. By the way, this is my Duckworth quilt that I did finish for my grandbaby. She gets first dibs. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this one the correct way, and it is with this star in the top corner. And so, so this is my unit 1. And you can switch the stars to go any direction you want. Well, I can't reach because I'm too short. Friends, I'm vertically challenged. So I can put my stars in any direction I want, but this is my unit 1. Now I can put any of my stars in whatever order I want, and it doesn't matter. Right? So I can put this one next to it. All I need is compensation strips, and I can move all of my units because this one is 22 inches. If you followed my measurements, this one should be 22 by 22. So it requires a floating border, and so I'm going to have to put a floating border if I want to put a border on here. And like I said, let me pull that up so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to share my desktop, and I'm going to pull the block. Let me see. So I have 2 up and 2 down. Yep. And then 2 across the bottom. There we go. This is how it's supposed to go. Keep your handout close by so that you're not losing track of where your things are supposed to be. And so this is my unit 1, right? And I'll go to my next unit. So my next unit that I'm going to do for this one is the same way. It's exactly the same way. But if I don't want to put those units right there, I could always replace my unit 2 with 4 smaller stars, or I could do something else. But my unit 2 is exactly the same as unit 1. And if you notice, unit 7, unit 8, unit 2, and unit 1 are identical, right? And so those are the 4 big ones. If you did not do the big star that goes in the center of 5, you can replace it with 4 stars of your choice. So if you wanted to just do 4 big stars, you could do it that way. So let's go to the next one. So my next unit, unit number 2, is exactly like unit number 1. And so let me go back over here. I have this big behemoth right here. And so in order for this one to fit with my other ones, I'm going to have to put a little skinny border. And so I'm going to have to trim these, right? And I'm going to have to put a skinny border. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to make sure that I did not chop off these points after I spent so much time working on this. And so I will have to come in here and just make sure that I came in at the correct angle, which I did not. And so now I'm going to have to come in here and fix that corner so I don't lose that point. And so let me show you how to fix that. You see how that one is really close to the edge? That tells me that when I stitched this, one of my seams was not wide enough so that that has a 1/4 of an inch seam just like this. And so what I can do to fix that is I can come in here and I can make this seam just a little bit wider, and I'm going to go at an angle. And this is something that a lot of quilt classes or online quilters, they don't teach you how to fix your boo-boos because they just show you the lovely, beautiful edited version. I will show you how to fix boo-boos because guess what? Nobody's perfect. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to come in at a tiny bit of an angle, and I'm just going to come in like that. And so that's what I'm going to do to this one. And so let me come over here to the sewing machine and let me show you what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to take a little nibble because it looks like that seam was a little bit too small. It was a little bit less than a 1/4 of an inch. And so what it did is it kind of interfered with how that corner ended up. And this was a bear, I'm not going to lie. This big block was a bear. All right, so now when I open this seam, look at there. Now I have a 1/4 of an inch. So now I have a 1/4 of an inch there at the end. Let me show you on my camera. So now that I came over here and I pull this over, I'm going to press it. I now have a 1/4 of an inch. You see that? I didn't have a 1/4 of an inch before, but I do now. And to fix that, I'm just going to take and I'm going to press the heck out of it. And now I can sew that and not lose my point. Super important. If you do not have room for a design wall, and a lot of people don't, you just take your units like I did and break them down into chunks. And what I did is I put this layout guide on the website. That way, if you want to go find it on the website, you can. And I do that because I think that it helps for a visual. So I'm going to show you my desktop, and then I'm going to go pull from, let me see, let me open it. Let me see if I can open another window while I'm streaming. There we go. I'm going to show you the website. It goes under Mystery Stars, and if you scroll to the bottom, I went ahead and I put this layout guide, and so it shows you how to put the units together, and then I also showed you how I'm putting mine together. And I put my star, I inverted it, so I flipped it up and I put these 2 little stars at the bottom because I wanted a bigger star in the corner, and that's just a personal preference. And so now I'm going to go to the next one, Unit 2. Finally, Unit 3 is a single unit with 2 baby stars, and all of them are going to be the same. So for unit number 3 is just a single unit with 2 babies and 1 big. I'm going to put it together just like all the other ones. And so you just keep deciding what star you're going to put where. And so this is the one that I had picked for that corner. So let me switch. And let me show you my machine up right there. This is the one that I picked for 3, and then I just need 2 baby stars to go with it, same as all the others. I'm just going to take and I'm going to check that I have a 1/4 of an inch at all these intersections. I'm going to measure my block. I'm going to find a couple of little blocks that I think would look good with it. I could do maybe this baby star. That one looks kind of cute. I may want to do this one, or I could do one of the other ones. But I like how these 2 are looking. And so you're just going to lay out your units. I could also do that one. Maybe I'll do these 2. And so I'm just going to take the same as before. I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm going to press outward. And I want those blocks to be as flat as I can get them before I put them together. Anytime that you can move those seams to reduce them, you're going to feel those seams, and if they're way too bulky, you're going to flip the seam the other direction. Now, here's the million-dollar question. And see, that one felt bulky. It just went the wrong way. So I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to lay it flat. Here's the million-dollar question. Seams open or seams to the side? Which one do you prefer? You just tell me, which one do you like? Seams open or seams to the side? All right. Try not to scorch your fabric. And then sometimes if my pieces are rumpled, I come through the back and I press them. But pressing, I think I spend more time pressing than anything else. All right, so now that I have this, and I've made a nice, great big block, and I feel like it's pressed and flat. I'm going to check to see if any of this has a wobble. See how that has a wobble? And this seam is a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to take and I'm going to trim it just a hair. And I love a little rotating block for this. I'm just going to lay this on there. Make sure that you have a nice sharp blade when you're trimming through a lot of layers. And I'm just going to remove that wobble. So this trim up tool has that 1/4 inch seam on there, and so I'm just going to lay that, make sure that I have a 1/4 inch seam, make sure that I have a 1/4 inch seam on this side, and see, I can see it right there. There's a little wobble. I'm going to get rid of that because that, believe it or not, that will interfere with how these blocks fit together. Just double check all of these corners, make sure that they're nice and square. This one is not. This is why it looked wobbly, because it can get distorted when you press. And so always double check. Once you have it ready, then just check your size. This one's a little bit shy of 12.5. So see how when I do that, it makes it 12.5. So that means it just needs a little bit more pressing to keep my seams going the way I want them. I might starch just a hair and push that direction to make sure this is exactly 12.5 and that my seams are flat. And so I'm just going to go that way. And these seams are now laying nice and flat. And my block is the correct size. And it looks like it has nothing that needs to be corrected. I always check my stitches, check my seams, and everything before I put it together. This is off by a hair. I don't care. Yeah, I usually do seams to the side. Now these little guys have to be 6.5 inches, so I'm just going to double check. Make sure these babies are 6.5 inches, and if they are, I'm going to attach them together, and then I will do unit 3. And this is how you're going to put your entire quilt together. Does everybody have a clear understanding of how to put your quilt together? You feel confident to go out there and do it on your own? Now this is 6, a little bit smaller than 6.5. Once I press it, it'll be exactly 6.5. All right, let me check this one. This one is 6.5. I just need to square it up. So this one looks good. This one's 6.5. Nothing needs to be done. This one's going to need pressed. And so you're just going to check every one. This is like 6.25, but see how this has all that stretch in it? Once I press that flat, it'll measure 6.5. Even though right now it says 6.25, those seams are not nice and flat. And so by taking this and pressing it hard, exactly the way it needs to go, I will make sure that it's the correct size. And it looks better when your seams are nice and flat and it quilts nicer. For those people who are long arm quilters, they will appreciate it if you can wrangle your seams. All right, now that I've pressed it, I'm going to check the size again, and it's amazing how much, look at there. You see how it was 6.25 before, and after pressing it's now 6.5? So nesting seams, super important. Pressing, super important. Look at this. I thought it was too small, but it's actually the right size now. So it's 6.5. And so this one should be 6.5. If I lay that on top, it should be exactly the same size. I can put these babies together. There's no seams to match because this is a single piece. And there's plenty of room right there, so I won't chop that off. So I'm going to lay that right there. And so I can't tell you enough. There's a lot of sewing channels out there, but not too many of them really spend a lot of time on pressing, which is important, or matching and nesting. I removed the excess. Now these units are ready to go, and this will be unit 3. So I'm going to go ahead and pin that. I usually write what unit I have. And that way you can just put them in a box and not panic about what unit you're working on. This is unit 3. The other one is unit 1. I'm going to sew these two together and I'm ready to go. So if you have some pressing tips for our friends who are new, because we have some people on our channel that are here just because they want to learn how to quilt for the first time. And so we have every type of quilter on here. So it's important. For me, the most important pressing tip is press along the stitch line. So if you press along that stitch line, you're less likely to distort your block. The other pressing tip is try to press dry blocks rather than wet blocks. Wet fabric is super stretchy. And so if you're pressing a wet block, it's a nightmare. All right, there it is. If I have a good seam allowance, that should fit. I do not. I have a little extra, but that's okay because I can chop it off here. And let me see what happened. So this seam, it looks like it's a little too narrow, and you can tell right there because I'm off just a hair. So I'm going to go back over here and just give it another little stitch. I'm not going to seam rip it because Jack the Ripper, the seam ripper, is not my friend. That just means I did not align that with the edge of my presser foot, so I'm going to do that again. There we go. And where you align those blocks are super important. It doesn't seem like it matters, but the longer I've been sewing, the longer I've been quilting, the more I realize even the little bits matter. All right, so let's see how that goes. Let me see which way that seam goes. That seam goes that way. That means these are going to have to go the other way. And now that looks like it does fit. I still have a tiny bit. I'm going to run the extra to this side rather than this side because there's only a 1/4 inch seam here, but I have a little bit of room and it won't distort my block. And so I'm going to press this baby flat in the middle. Flip it over. Match that seam, and so on and so forth. And I'm going to do this for the entirety of my quilt. I'm going to put all these blocks together, and then I'm going to sew my top. Now, what happens if you don't have a big sewing machine? So my husband was kind, and he bought me a used long arm. And so I have, well, it's not really a long arm, it's a mid arm. It's a Baby Lock Coronet. It's a discontinued model, but I got it used and it was a great deal. And so I can go downstairs to my basement now and quilt my own quilt tops, but not everybody has that luxury. So what do you do if you do not have a giant sewing machine? My suggestion to you is for you to quilt each segment of this quilt, each unit, the 9 units, and then put them together in a quilt as you go method. So if you are interested in a quilt as you go method, let me know. And I will do a whole segment for you on how to do quilt as you go. All right, that's it, friends. You're just going to take these 9 units, you're going to put them together, and then when we come back in 2 weeks, we're going to start doing the Fruits of the Spirit. So for those of you who don't know what that is, Fruits of the Spirit is our next series, and it goes all the way through the spring. And so I will be putting stuff on the website and on the Facebook page and the YouTube channel, so that you guys can find the handouts, the images, the pictures, the supply list. And so if you're interested in Quilt As You Go, let me know because this works out perfectly. You see how I have that unit over there? I could actually take this unit back it, leave an extra 1.5 inches on either side or 2 inches, and I could quilt this entire thing and then do the same to the next unit and the next unit, and then put them together once they've already been quilted. So if you're interested in Quilt As You Go, let me know, and I will work on a segment doing an entire quilt top Quilt As You Go. I will also do a series on snazzy quilts so that you can do them on your small domestic machine, because like I said, not everybody has a big long arm. I didn't for 35 years, and so let me know if you're interested. Other than that, start putting your units together, and you can post your pictures on Facebook. Please hashtag Jelly Roll Club. Tell me what you're doing with your blocks. Show me your finished quilts. Some of them are really beautiful. They're already done. All right, friends, I will see you in 2 weeks for Fruits of the Spirit. I have a couple of things that I need to update on my calendar because, like I said, I've been spending time with my grandkids instead of my sewing room. But I'm back now that school is, fall break is over. I'm back in my sewing room. All right, everybody, stay safe. There's more storms coming. So please be careful out there. If you can evacuate to higher ground, don't stay and try to tough it out. Get to a safe place. I will see you guys in 2 weeks for the Fruits of the Spirit quilt. And like I said, I'm going to be updating the website when I'm done and we're ready to go. All right, friends, give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed this series. Great. If not, go back and make just a few of the hard blocks and just test out your skills. Every one of these are skill builders. All right, everybody, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks right here. Same bat time, same bat channel. Bye-bye. Thank you. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Okay, everybody? Thanks a lot.